Public Works.
Public Works Department. We purchased we are in dire need of building a new Public Works Department. And the situation there is shameful. There, at present, are, I think, 2 restrooms, and that's 100% more restrooms than were available there about 10 years ago. And it's home to, let's call it 100 of our hardest working employees and lowest paid employees. And we just keep kicking the can down the road. We desperately need to build this facility. And now there's some new constraints. One is that the existing department is on the airport property, and we're being evicted. And we're being evicted quickly. And we partially addressed this problem in 2018, I think. We bought a parcel of land, and the parcel of land that we bought is in the most inconvenient location it can possibly be in Martin County. But there was so little property that was available, we bought it. So it's over off of Canner Highway. It's around the golf resorts. So we purchased 30 acres for $6 million. So we have debt service. We had to build a road. We've been saving a little bit of money here and there to build the project. We don't have anywhere near the amount of money that we need to build the project. And it's still in a terribly inappropriate and inconvenient location. And now also the governor and the legislature and the newly appointed chief financial officer have signaled their intentions for next year and the year after. They're going to go after local governments. They're going to do something. They're going to do something to our ad valorem collection, and in Martin County, that's absolutely catastrophic. So, when we purchased the property in 2018, as I said, we looked all over, and all the locations were terrible. So we chose the least awful of the alternatives. Something that we didn't consider at the time, because we still had an 8-year lease, was the fairgrounds. The fairgrounds lease ends next year. So all of a sudden that property, which is combined with the Parks Department maintenance facility on Indian Street and the fairgrounds, I think it's about 20 acres. Am I right? 22 acres? 13 acres. I don't know if we can build the facility on 13 acres, but I think we need to figure out whether we can or not. And part of the way to fund this is to sell that property that we purchased off of 96th or Canner or wherever it is, and use some of those proceeds in order to help us build this facility. But we need to set aside money now in order to move the Public Works Department. And that includes, in my way of thinking, that includes adding more money into this budget. And there's money available. We have no choice. We are going to be forced to provide a Public Works Department. Let's do it as quickly as possible. I don't know that we're going to have any ability to raise funds next year at all. So we're kind of in an urgent place right now. And another urgency is the clinic. Our lease is ending there, and we have plans to construct a clinic, and that is such a convenience, and it's such a money saver for Martin County taxpayers. We need to proceed with both of these projects, and unfortunately, that means we need more money. But it's available, fortunately, from this year's budget if we make the political decision to do the right thing. Commissioner Vargas.
Okay, so you're saying we need more money. You mean to add on
Yes.
as an additional here?
Yes.
You know what? We really need to go back to this particular budget. There are some items in there that don't belong Or
Tell
you
me
need
what
to
they
push
are,
them
and let's see
out?
if, and then let's eliminate them.
Well, somebody wants to put an EV charger in the parking lot?
I don't think that's not going to
I
make
mean-
$10 million.
No, it's not. It's not. But the point is, where are we going then? Because we only have so much money. It's not a bottomless pit. And people
This
can
is a one-
smile
this is
and
a
say,
one-time
well,
expense.
why is she asking this? I understand that. But what about our reserve? Shouldn't we be shoring that up?
We are.
Well, if we're going to be spending more money here, how does that work? We have to be
How
belt
much
tightening.
extra are we putting in reserves this year? It's substantial, but we need both.
In our general fund reserve alone, we have our 23.8 million required restricted reserves. We have another 5.5 million for our long-term fiscal strategy reserves for debt payoffs, for the supervisor expansion, and also another 2 million to hopefully offset that public works facility P3 annual expense. We also have started building up all of our fire rescue reserves, about 7.3 million, in order to take care of those future fire station needs.
That's another thing. If we don't prioritize for our employees, then our money is going to be instead prioritized for new fire stations, new training facilities for the sheriff, new this and that. And meanwhile, our own employees, our own hardworking employees, we're not providing a suitable home for them. And that's shameful.
Okay, but are there other headings where we need to pull in, curtail, so we can provide for employees? And we have to look at this very carefully. I mean, the constant budget increase is not sustainable. I hate to use that word, it's been used a lot, but it's just not by the county. Unless we're starting to raise taxes, and I'm just not going to do that. We need to be cutting expenses.
Commissioner Hetherington.
I will just point, I didn't support the CIP during this, I didn't support a portion of it because there were a lot of new projects in it. And there was a $6 million new park that has not made it yet, even in the review for Parks and Rec. And and that got budgeted, I believe, in the CIP. That might be a good source to look to divert. Pineapple Park. That had not been vetted in the Parks and Rec master plan. And that might be a good place to look to move to crucial public works facilities.
Ms. Murley, how much money do we need to build a public works department?
The cost is estimated between $80 and $100 million for that public works facility.
And 6 million is dropping, somebody smiled a moment ago, it's dropping the bucket. Okay, same thing.
But if we're talking about where to cut, then we have to have a conversation about,
That's fine,
Where
and
we
we
will-
can cut. We can cut, but 6 million is not even touching what they're asking for to do this. So we have to go elsewhere to really start to rein in the dollars.
$6 million is a pretty hefty start.
Everything's very large, but that's not going to really make a dent right here.
Mr. Donahue, would you come forward, please?
So by way of background, Commissioners, one of the areas we've been looking at with both the clinic and the public works, which also includes general services and parks facilities, is to look at a P3 process where we can have a public-private partnership that might also build some facility that helps pay for it, leasing out a section, et cetera. That is something the legislature introduced a few years ago. It's just now making its way into use by local governments, and school boards have been using it more effectively or using it more, period. So we were looking to explore. We have hired a couple of firms to assist us with this past year to identify, as opposed to a traditional design, bid, build concept where you have all of your funds at once, to you look at a P3 process where we would be looking at a reoccurring revenue that we could devote to sort of like a lease payment, lease purchase. Really, it's really a lease purchase. And the combination of either a pure lease purchase or a lease purchase with a revenue source that would help. And that's what we've been looking at. Or that's our only choice, we thought, at this point, to be successful in the near term, as opposed to saving up a long period of time for the traditional design bid build, or borrowing traditional funds against gas tax or something like that for a borrowing. So anyway, that's in our, you all approved us to explore that. We still don't have the results of that yet. So that's what's our current plan. Just letting you know is that our current plan is to continue on with a potential of a P3 project for the Public Works facility. And it looks like we will be able to bring forward an item for the clinic here shortly. And that's not using county general revenue funds. It's using funds we have allocated to our health system, which will save us money without incurring future obligations to your ad valorem source. So,
Mr. Donahue, do you think that we can build an adequate public works facility on 13 acres?
The fairground site doesn't currently have stormwater improvements. It doesn't have turn lane improvements. So when you take that 13 acres, start adding those necessities in it, you're left with about, let's just say 10 acres. That's currently what we're sitting on at the current facility.
That's with or without the stormwater improvements and the turning lanes?
Currently, what we have at the airport facility does not have the turn lanes, and it does not have the stormwater facilities either. So once you start cutting those things out and building the site into it, we're going to be left with the same square footage, same acreage. So it'd be tough. It'd be tough to gain anything out of it.
Is it doable? Doesn't have to be a ornate building, just a building.
It's such a long, narrow site to be able to do something adequate with and still plan for the future. If we're looking to build this facility for another 25, 30 years, it's going to be extremely difficult to do it on that particular site.
Okay, so go to the inconvenient site off of Canner. When do you think we're going to have enough money to be able to start construction?
I don't have an answer for that right now. We are, like we said, like Don said, we were looking at real estate consultants to see what we can do with a piece of that property to leverage that to help finance the construction. Another benefit of using a P3 would be the efficiencies of construction. A lot of companies can come in and build industrial warehouse facilities, either by metal building, enhanced metal buildings, or thermal store. SIP is basically what it's called, where it's an insulated metal building. There's different ways of building this thing that's probably more efficient than we could do it on our own. So there is a benefit of bringing in an outside firm to help us with that construction, as well as build, a commercial piece that would help finance it as well.
And when are we being evicted from the airport?
I don't know.
We got a guy.
George Stoke, Assistant County Administrator. The airport received an airport compliance letter as a result of a Part 13 adjudication proceeding with the FAA, in which the FAA has noted that property is intended for aeronautical use and is currently non-compatible. So they haven't given us a you will drop dead date of which you leave, but failure to take such actions will lead to a Part 16 FAA process, which is similar to a court function. And then if we're found in non-compliance, there are penalties that come along with that. So, just from a professional perspective, I would say you've got 5 years.
Commissioner Campy.
Wow, the meeting got really interesting all of a sudden. I thought
We've been ignoring our needs.
Hey, listen, I think you're making bold statements, and I'm not disappointed in what you have to say. First thing I say that I would disagree with is I would absolutely say that our men and women of fire rescue are Martin County employees. So they're definitely part of our family. So that part, yes. But a lot of what I've been here, as you have been for a while, and we have heard these things, and yes, we have kicked the can down the road. I remember several years ago being absolutely shocked when I heard that, I think at the time, 90 employees that were staging at the Public Works facility at the airport. You can imagine you show up for work, you're getting your equipment together, the truck together, you're putting your teams out to go to different sites. And maybe before you start the day out on the side of the road somewhere, you might want to just use the restroom. And they had one for 90 employees. I work at my regular job. There is 8 of us. The bathroom's busy all day long. With 8 people, I cannot comprehend. And remember, we're not talking about 90 people that are staying at this location. So if I can't go to the bathroom right this minute, I can come back in 15 minutes. They all have to leave within X minutes to head out into the county to do their work. It's embarrassing. It's the same conversation we used to have with the fire stations. Anybody, you drive past your local neighborhood fire station, you had no idea that sewage would come up through the shower pans, or the kitchen cabinets were falling off the walls, or the bathrooms were filthy, or everything was rusty. We should be embarrassed if we are treating any of our employees and forcing them to work in substandard facilities. I think our residents would be very disappointed and embarrassed in us when we're talking about this morning, and it walks through every department. How do you recruit the people that you need? How do you retain the people that you need? There is dollars and cents things like your benefits package, but the intangible is people have a level of pride or a certain minimum standard of where they will find it acceptable to work. And if you go over to the Public Works facility, and I've been there many times, we have many different departments there: mosquito control, signage, traffic, lots of different people there. And they work in what most of us would consider highly substandard conditions. That speaks to whether or not you might want to work there or continue to work there. We've been having this conversation since Mr. Donaldson was the county engineer. Now look at him. We used to tease him, or at least I would tease him, and we would call it the Don Donaldson complex. We thought eventually he would pass away and we'd have to name it after him. But that being said, out of old age, I was so happy for him when we finally found a piece of property to purchase. I didn't realize, to Commissioner Hurd's point, that it was as inconvenient as she feels that it is. I know that we looked at a couple. It's a catch-22. It would hopefully be a large operation. So I know we looked at a piece of property on Willoughby, just south of Pinewood Elementary School, and that really didn't work. And then we looked at some other spots. So the concept of getting to the piece that we finally purchased through a heavy negotiation, this is the first time I'm hearing that it might not be the ideal spot. So I wrote a couple of notes when I heard my colleague speaking. What is the value? I know we're not selling it, so I guess what we would need to do is have Mr. Stokas and Mr. McBean figure out once we vacate the airport site, and then we would leave it as clear ground that we would have to build whatever's going to be there?
No, you would simply, Commissioner, you would simply leave the property.
No, I understand that, but what would we do with it once we left? What would the airport do?
Oh, the airport will then engage into its 5-year capital improvement program, and it will clear it and turn it. Currently, it's under the master plan, and what this body has seen before is it will be approximately 64 sunshade hangars to address the dire need for that type of aircraft storage.
That money that is raised renting those hangars
Stays on the airport.
stays on the airport.
Absolutely. Yes.
No possibility of squeezing cash off this property to come out of that place.
No.
Do you currently pay rent to be on the airport?
Yes, you do. You currently have a day-to-day operational license at the airport.
What would we save by moving us off of the?
About 260.
200 and
It's just under 300,000 a year.
Okay, so if you're creating a column, there's the first 300. Now, the fairgrounds has also been, I have said for many years, is probably the most valuable piece of property that the county owns. I can't think of more. One, it's large, it's not gigantic, but it's larger than most. Two, it's beautifully located next to the industrial hub and train and transportation. It's in the heart of Stewart. I wouldn't think about putting another one of our government buildings there. I would think about selling most of it because I think it's very valuable. Taking all of the proceeds of that and put it on the same ledger that we just did the 300K. Then I also, part of that 11, are you including the Parks Department maintenance in that same number?
Just the fairgrounds is what I was talking about.
Okay. I would also include the Parks and Rec maintenance facility that is currently located there. And on the corner, on the southern corner, the most valuable piece, and consolidate that operation into our public works operation. How many acres are we currently on? Did you say 10 at the airport? Approximately?
About 10.4s.
Okay, so let's call it 10. And there's a couple of acres at Parks and Rec?
Yeah, about 3 or 4.
Okay, and how much is the Canner Highway?
30.
30. All right, so that's 13 currently used to 30. Any other, I know there's a little maintenance place at Hal Patioki. I can't imagine you move them because they're working at that site. Do we have any other that I'm not thinking of off the top of my head? Do we have any other yards or maintenance facilities?
We do have some of our storage is offsite, for public works, for instance, aggregates and things for roads. We had to move that off the airport a few years ago. So we've been storing some of it. Either we have it at some out at the landfill, and we also have some at our old EOC site that we've been using. So that's
You don't
probably.
gain any financial value from consolidating it to Canner. You're not.
No, we don't. No, other than that's.
It would be smarter to have it all combined.
Right,
Not
exactly.
paying any rent.
No, we won't gain any economic value other than consolidation of efficiency.
So now to my colleague's point, assuming that she's right and that Canner's not the ideal spot, and maybe you guys agree. I don't know. I never had that conversation with anybody, but I'm not disagreeing. If that's the case, we bought that before anything was built there. Even, what is that called? The
South Florida Gateway.
what's it called? South Florida Gateway. I've been by there. We just had a conversation at our last meeting about it. They're moving along, and that's become a real Class A industrial park that we own 30 acres of. Maybe, and what did we pay? Whatever we.
6 plus 3.
I bet that property is worth more than 6 plus 3 now. So if
6 million.
6 million. If Miss Commissioner Hurd is accurate, which I might believe her, let's see what it would cost what we could make selling it. And then to your point about a 3P or a public-private partnership, we have a couple of businesses, large businesses, that have been doing their own deals. Specifically, Ashley Capital has the old ag tech that's now called Sunrise Grove. And then they have a piece of property that they've been more than willing to negotiate with our fire rescue on the other side of the street. Now, that's only a couple hundred acres. I don't know if they'd want to give up 30. But if you were on the east side of 95 or the west side of 95, maybe you work a deal with them that you buy X amount of acres with the ability to buy the second and third phases up, in the future. Because there's no way we're going to build an $80 or $100 million facility. You'd have to decimate the rest of the budget in every other department to be able to build a public works facility for one department, or maybe Parks and Rec. So I think if that's the case, we should give some of our very talented thinkers and negotiators the task of taking the next couple of months to go out and figure out how to do this. Because one of the most successful strategies that the county has used was what the CRA came up with on Map Road and Bridge Road, we would never have been able to get those projects done. We were in the same kind of cycle that this public works facility is in. Great ideas, lots of thought, lots of conversation, just could never get it done. As a matter of fact, we did the same thing with the new fire stations. We borrowed the money, which is a legitimate business practice for big corporations, that basically the county government is a business enterprise. And then, but you need to know, you'd have to have the ability to borrow the money at great terms, which the government can. And you'd have to have the stream of being able to pay it back. We did that on Bridge Road and MAP, and we finished those projects that we never would have been able to. We still would be discussing, because we only brought in enough to have a conversation and plan. We never had enough to actually do it. And so when we did, so even with 3 or 4 fire stations that we've successfully built, it would have taken, we'd still be talking about them. And meanwhile, Mr. Donaldson, have we been discussing this for 10 or 15 years? Haven't we been having this conversation for at least a decade?
Yes.
Yeah. So, to Commissioner Hurd's point, and that's why I said it's bold, I wasn't expecting her to say that. It's actually politically daring to say something. When you first said, well, you know, we got a lot of things going on here, and I heard Commissioner Vargas agree, we've already know that Commissioner Vargas is expecting a tight budget. And I think she was shocked by what you said. And but that being said, you still need to get 3 of us to agree and have the public understand its importance. And I don't know if the public necessarily feels like when we talk about moving the county administration out of this building, I don't think there's ever going to be a political will for that, because the public, money's tight for everybody. They don't want to hear about the government building new buildings. But I think people are smart and reasonable that if we can present a case that makes sense for why we would have to consolidate public works and treat people respectfully, now the 5 of us and staff have to figure out, how do you pay for it? I think that's the only way you're going to be able to pay for it. Because to raise $80 or $100 million for the public, and it's not going to be the Taj Mahal. You're talking about pretty generic buildings, but it's just going to be really expensive to do. You'd have to really make a point to show that, as well as the other departments can't feel that they don't count, that everyone's budget is going to get decimated so that we can raise half the money. So I think you'd have to put it out for some kind of big bond and then think about how do you pay for it. But you can't wait 5 years, because it's unfair to add another 5 years to a 10 or 15-year process. That's really kicking the can down the road. So my final comment is Commissioner Hurd's not wrong. She's sounding an alarm, which I give her a lot of credit for, that this is something that can't just be, discussed for a couple of minutes at the meeting and then moved along. So good for you, Commissioner Hurd.
Mr. Capps.
Yes, my visit to the Public Works facility a few months ago, I was really rather surprised. It looked like a bunch of old mobile homes that have been bolted together that people are working in over there. It's pretty primitive. And so I see the need, and I applaud our chair for wanting to address it. I have a mortgage calculator on my phone just to give a little bit of context, and I put in $80 million, 30 years, 7%. And the payment would be $532,000 per month. And if we borrowed that at that rate,
But we don't pay at 7. What do you figure we would pay?
Only around 3 to 4 at this
Oh,
point.
really?
Yeah, 3.
I would be surprised.
So you're 3 point, you want to do 3.5?
Yeah.
Okay, so that would be $359,000 per month. And did you say, how much are we paying for rent now?
We're paying just under $300,000
A year.
So that's
a year.
that's not going to sink us. I mean, the difference between what we would have to pay if we just went out and borrowed the money and what we're paying now is, $60,000 a month. So that helps to give a little perspective. And there are probably more creative ways of going about it that would bring that difference down to even a smaller amount, I suppose.
And Commissioner Capps, I like what you're doing. Can you look and make that 40 million instead of 80 million?
Yeah.
And 3%.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, but even at 3, I don't mean to make it like where it's a number that we just find the number that we like. I like 3.5% because I do. But if we create a public-private partnership, if we understood that it wasn't a blank check, if you had to build what you needed to build and you could only spend 40 million, which let's not forget, that's a ton of money. What's 40 million?
Yeah, 40 million, 30 years, 3.5%, 179,000 a month.
I remember when I first got here, the property appraiser and the supervisor of elections and the tax collector were leasing their spaces. If some of you that were here a long time, you remember we purchased Mrs. Davis's building on Martin Luther King. She was renting it. And Laurel Kelly was the property appraiser. She was renting in the tower. And I don't know if it was Ruth Ski or her Larry, what was his name? Larry Osteen. They were renting. And I remember when I first showed up, I think, and you can double check these numbers, I think Laurel was paying $50,000 a month, and Vicky was paying $30,000 or $40,000 a month. And we purchased their buildings, and there was an uproar. Why you shouldn't be spending this money? We have saved millions of dollars since the day we purchased those buildings. So when someone hears $175,000 a month, oh my God, I'm sure there'll be a member of the public that'll come and say, shame on us. But you got a $760 million, give or take, dollar budget to create this and use a financing tool, not to be spendthrifts, but to use a financing tool. Let's get it done and get it built and be done with it. Everyone was horrified that we would build the Indian Street Bridge, the Roosevelt Bridge, all of these projects. And we finally did it, and it became a benefit to the community. So to Commissioner Hurd's point, let's agree that it's not going to be something that 5 years we're still discussing. Let's take her charge and ask the staff to come back. We're brainstorming up here, but come back with a legitimate version of this. I don't know if I would move off the property. I think if you're over on Canner or you're on Martin Highway or you're on Willoughby, it's the same. It's about the structure of the facility and the convenience and efficiency of the process that's most important. So if we want to make a vote to decide to ask staff to really think about it much more seriously, I'm in. The medical clinic, I'm a little more leery on, but the maintenance and public works facility and consolidating everybody we could put over there, storing stuff that's stored all over the county and securing it in one location, I think that's a good idea. I didn't think we were going to be discussing it today, but I'm happy about it.
Well, there's some urgency.
I'm getting it. I hear you.
There's a lot of urgency, simply because I think we're going to see ad valorem caps imposed in 6 months. And I also think that we're going to be evicted in the next 3 years. So we need to figure out a plan probably today.
All right, good for you.
Commissioner Vargas.
Okay, so I think the suggestion is that we go into debt. I am not for that at all. And we're just picking figures out on the air. The market dictates what money costs. It's not free at all. It's not going to be near free at all. So, we really need to step up to the plate and really take a hard look and see how we want to proceed forward. We're going to have to nip and tuck elsewhere. We only have so much money. Somebody made the comment that, well, businesses do that, but businesses provide a product. We go to the till. We go to the pocketbooks of the taxpayers, of which I am one of those. And that is not the same concept whatsoever. So we have to remember what our chairperson said. We're going to be seeing severe situations. And are we suggesting we're going to raise taxes for Martin County so that we can have a public works in one area and buy another piece of property, and maybe we'll sell a piece of property and maybe it'll be this price and maybe it'll be this interest rate? We're kind of talking, just kind of pie in the sky type thing at this point.
Commissioner Capps.
I think that this might be a good time to talk about and I know you'll be talking about it again later, about our overall debt position and whether or not we could afford to be borrowing more money for a public works facility when the time comes. And in my studies, it was very evident to me that Martin County has a very low debt policy, and has for many years. If you look at the amount of debt we have compared to the amount of reserves we have more reserves than we do total debt. I do believe.
Yes.
That's true. Okay. And then if you look at, see if I can find it here. Where is that page where the debt policies of Martin County are very conservative? Page 87. There are 4 different benchmarks that we use to measure our debts in Martin County. The county's debt capacity will be maintained within the following parameters. Net general obligation bonded debt per capita will remain under $900. And then net debt as a percentage of estimated market value of taxable property will not exceed 3%. And then the third test is the ratio of debt service expenditures as a percentage of governmental fund expenditures will not exceed 10%. And then lastly, the debt per capita as a percentage of income per capita will not exceed 5%. I was quite impressed with that. And it suggested to me that Martin County's fiscal policy is very conservative. And we don't have a lot of debt in Martin County by comparison, probably to other local governments. So that's perspective that I think that's very relevant on this subject. If it comes to a point where we have to borrow some money to build a public works facility, I think the operative question would be, are we in a low enough debt position to be doing something like that? And it would appear to me that we are.
Commissioner Heatherington.
Yes. So just a couple points that were raised, and I want to weigh in on the public works facility. So if we're getting evicted in 3 to 5 years, then I think, and this has been in the CIP since I've been here in 2018. So, and I see the urgency of getting a facility if we're getting evicted in the next 3 to 5 years. I'm not in favor of adding to this budget, but if there's something in here that are not critical needs, and that public works facility has been in this book for a while. There are new projects that were added this year, and we've got to prioritize them. If that is what we deem a critical need, we have to prioritize that first. And all new projects that were not all new, if it's not a critical need, then we've got to first put our dollars towards those critical needs. And I think 80 million, I believe, is an inflated number. I think with the P3 and some of those strategies, I think we can do a lot better. So not in favor of adding to this budget. I'd be willing to move resources that are not allocated to critical needs. I think we need to really consider based on that eviction notice and, again, prioritize. And the fairgrounds, I think that we had looked at a proposal for its highest and best use, and I feel like there's probably, I don't know what it is, a better highest and best use than Public Works than that facility on that particular property.
Well, I would certainly like to find some certainty about our capital improvement plan before we leave this today, because I think we need to prioritize the Public Works Department. We need to prioritize building that building, and we need to have better, more solid ideas how we're going to do that.
Commissioner, maybe I can make a suggestion. I think we hear you loud and clear, and we agree that the Public Works facility is a priority. Let us, my suggestion would be to leave the CIP just as it is, that we would identify or bring back projects that we could at least put as targets to be potentially on hold until we figure this out. Let us work with our P3 partners and try to bring some ideas to see if there's a way to structure a project using traditional means of Public Works, which would be our gas tax and our franchise fee types funds, and what ad valorem is potentially available in this year through Ms. Murley's recommendation. If that's not enough, then we could have some projects identified that we could postpone or take off the books that would be able to help fund the reoccurring funds for this project. But having not identified the actual need, why don't we leave those projects alone, and then we can work with you on identifying those between now and the public hearing on which projects we would target as potential projects to put on hold, that you could be tentatively approved or even approved in the budget, but they would not move forward until we've resolved the Public Works facility.
Commissioner Capps.
One of the, I'm open to all of these ideas, but I would like us to be able to not raise the millage rate. Like if that'd be one condition, that we be able to have a flat millage. That would be an outer perimeter for me. I'm not opposed to rearranging priorities and even adding a little bit for something like this, but that would be nice to be able to say that we didn't raise the millage rate. I think that would be really good. I have one other question. When you look at this ad valorem impacts sheet, it says reserves for future capital projects, $4.3 million. Is that already allocated to a number of different things?
That is 1.5 of that's going to be the remainder of the supervisor of elections facility expansion to get that. She was also expressing urgency for that situation. But the rest is to just offset some of these pending capital projects that are currently unfunded within the CIP as well.
So a good bit of that is already spoken for?
No, just the 1.5 for the supervisor.
Oh, okay. So that's a nice little chunk to start with.
Yes.
So and there are all kinds of funding mechanisms, right? There's the P3, traditional financing. You can do like a bond, right? And I guess to me, one of the big things is how much money do you need up front for a project of that size? I guess it depends on which funding mechanism you select. And but what kind of money do we need to come up with to sign the dotted line and commit ourselves to building this project? Is it like 10%, 15%, 20%?
So commissioners, under the traditional design bid build, you would need 100%. Some of these other methods of P3 is where some of the schools have built facilities. They've actually done it with zero, and then they keep their funds for what they call the FF&E, furniture, fixtures, and equipment, and then your lease payment essentially is your lease purchase amount, where the financing essentially is built into the P3. So I think there's a combination of those. The more you have, as you know, to put down, the less your annual payments or lease payment would be on the project. So I think that's probably the most interesting thing about the P3s and why the school boards have used it so much is their capital funds have been restricted, but they may have the operational dollars, but not the capital funds. And so that's where this method of construction, it's similar to a design build, only it has the added concept of actually rolling in the financing with it.
So what we're probably going to need to raise is somewhere between $0 and $20 million to be able to do this.
That's correct. I would say that's I think somewhere between 0 and 20. I don't think you would need more than that under a financing method. Yes.
Right. So that to me gives it more perspective. I mean, when you hear the 80 and the 100 million, that seems gigantic, but really to do it, you just need somewhere between 0 and 20 million, probably, and those are the kind of dollars we'll need to rearrange to be able to pull this off.
Old light.
Also, commissioners, bear in mind that we today set the tentative millage rate, and hereafter, all we can do is lower it. So keep in mind that there is probably a cap coming our way.
See what you started?
Yeah.
No, I was talking to Mrs. Murley. I wouldn't say that to you.
Thank you.
I would say it to Mrs. Murley. She started it. Okay.
Okay, so we have an understanding that we're going to be looking into this immediately, and we are going to have, before our final budget hearing, we're going to have more concrete answers about our ability to borrow, how much we have to borrow, what we can rearrange in our capital improvement plan in order to make this fast-tracked.
Got it.
Okay.
And also if a P3 is in the offing,
Yes.
to garner favorable lease terms.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the capital improvement plan?
We didn't discuss any other.
We didn't discuss that.
Do you want to discuss any parts of it?
Do you have any more?
I have nothing else to say.
She said we already approved it.
You already tentatively approved it.
So you need,
And the reason that there's such a huge increase is because of the half-cent sales.
Yes.
that bears repeating.
Because the what?
Half-cent sales tax is included in it.
Oh, yes, I wrote that.
Move approval.
We're not making a motion, are we? No?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
A motion passes 4-1 with Commissioner Barton.